Thank you everyone for attending BIM360 Model Coordination, a topic that I've become more and more passionate about. I've been working with this module associated with BIM360 for, I'd say, well over a year, if not a couple of years now. I like to think of myself as pretty proficient. I've used it on a number of projects, and I'll go through what I've learned and how essentially my firm has started to tackle utilizing this tool, some of the lessons learned and whatnot, but feel free to ask questions. I like to think I can hopefully respond to most. That said, you should know I do not work for Autodesk. I work for Perkins & Will. I'm the design application manager out of the New York and DC studio. And so, yeah, I support just about all projects specific to those studios along with the firm as it relates to design applications. And these days, BIM360 and the model coordination module have played a pretty large role. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay. So I've broken this topic into 4 sections. First, I'd like to give you just a general understanding of the module, just an overview of just what this innovation is and how I believe it is, in fact, an innovation. Then I'd like to just jump right on into how a typical project might utilize the model coordination module. You'll find that's probably one of the bigger sections of this presentation. With the assumption that you're interested in the module at that point and you're excited by the workflow, the project workflow, I have a couple of suggestions when it comes to implementation. All right, it's not necessarily black and white as to how to really get the ball rolling, depending on whether or not you have subscription to BIM360, and we'll talk about that. Finally, there's just a couple of lessons learned that I'd like to make note of before you really kind of get your feet wet. And yeah, so then again, we'll open up to Q&A at the very end. Okay. Okay, so the overview, the why, the strategy. So the whole idea here is that we're already, the hope anyway, the understanding is that you're already on BIM360, taking advantage of the more popular document management module. I think Autodesk has recently rebranded the subscription to like BIM360 Collaborate Pro or something like that. The point is that you're hopefully or likely already utilizing BIM360 as like this glorified FTP site that's hosting your Revit models, your Revit projects. But maybe you're hosting it, or maybe say a consultant or another discipline is hosting the project, but you're just not connected to it. The understanding in this presentation is that you are taking advantage of BIM360 to some degree. I did a presentation on BIM360 and the advantages of just the core documentation module, I think a few months ago. And I'm assuming that recording is out there somewhere, and you're encouraged to listen to that if, in fact, you're still questioning whether or not to purchase or invest in BIM360. But again, the assumption in this particular presentation is that there's already investment made that you're hosting your models on BIM360. And if that's the case, the idea is that all your consultants, everybody's already invited to your BIM360 site. So being that we're all, in theory, at least either hosting our models or uploading our models and downloading models off of BIM360, you're already having an account, already signed in. Just makes sense to, heck, what else can you do there? Now that everybody's already like invited and part of this kind of, whether it's, you know, an alternative FTP site, we're already going here on a regular. So there are these other modules that we might as well take advantage of. If in fact, it makes sense. And again, when it comes to clash detection, model coordination, I tend to think it does make sense. I'm very familiar with Navisworks. I was a huge fan way back when, as far as just a basic sense of clash detection and benefiting from our 3-dimensional models. But the problem with the Navisworks workflow, as far as I'm concerned, even though it's an incredibly robust tool, is just the effort and time it took to share content. Or to share clashes. I mean, heck, you'd have to export your content as your Revit models as NWC files and send them to the contractor. They'd load them up into to Navisworks. It would generate clashes and views and viewpoints and all this good stuff. And then they'd, of course, have some type of coordination meeting. And then you talk to all your disciplines, you understand exactly the challenges that you're faced with, and maybe they issue like a freedom file that you then review your clashes on your own, and then maybe fix the model, and then you'd update, you know, after fixing your model, making updates, you then resend to the contractor an updated Navisworks file that can then rerun and show you've tackled some clashes. And honestly, that workflow is relatively exhausting. You almost need somebody dedicated solely to take it on, to actually to manage all these clashes and manage all the disciplines. I tend to think with this model coordination module, if you're taking advantage of clash detection through BIM 360, you're removing this role almost entirely. There is no, there's very little effort to updating your clash sets or your clashes and tracking your issues and accountability. Like, it's all kind of managed almost live. And that's really where this innovation is. And that's really why I get excited about model coordination, this module, because it's an extension of hosting your model on BIM 360. So we're going to find here is that there's this, we're all hopefully to some degree taking advantage of document management, which is, again, is just hosting our content on BIM 360. And then we're going to be pushing, essentially using this new module, model coordination. It's just going to be looking at that content, looking at those Revit files that you're hosting, and essentially generating clashes off these files. And then of all the clashes that you generate, you create issues out of the ones that are especially important. So as you might imagine, you could have thousands upon thousands of clashes between different models. But it's just, of those clashes, what are actually important? And that's, you're going to be using the issues feature within BIM 360 to call attention to these actual concerns, and then tracking the progress of hopefully them being remedied. And that's kind of how the workflow must apply. This right here is just an example of a team inside the model coordination module able to pan, navigate. I mean, heck, I have teams using this module just because it's really lightweight and easy to navigate through the Revit models and understand what's going on in the space, versus launching Revit and trying to orbit, in that world. It's just it's laggy. It takes lots of time. Not to mention, you need an actual license to Revit to launch it, and the proficiency in launching Revit. Whereas if you just take advantage of this module, you're on the web, you're able to orbit, pan, isolate clashes relatively intuitively without a skill set in, say, Revit. The big thing here, shy of going into the actual project workflow, is kind of a bare minimum, like as far as requirements go. I am encouraging everyone on the design team to really to benefit from this module, to benefit from BIM 360. Everybody really wants to be invited. All right, that means from principal, from design principal to the project manager, project designer, architect, junior designers, you name it. All disciplines really need to be invited to participate on the platform, and it shouldn't be just the people that are doing production. I honestly think that the owner, any other consultants, should have access to this, to the web, and be comfortable enough to sign in and navigate fundamentally around the site to really benefit from these modules. And so, yes, I'm definitely encouraging the entire design team to be on board and to be signing in. Also, it is ideal for all models to be hosted on the platform. Now, I do have a workaround here when it comes to the implementation. I'll talk about it. I have a workaround for those models that aren't hosted, but rather just uploaded weekly or whenever you're trying to share updates. You only be doing that if you don't have a license or subscription to BIM 360. You've just been invited to a project, and so to get updates, you're manually uploading your Revit files on a weekly basis and downloading any updates from other disciplines. Like, if you're in that world, that's not ideal. You can still benefit, and I'll show you how you can benefit. But ideally, everyone has a subscription. Everyone's actually hosting their content on the platform. Only those models that are actually hosted on the platform really will generate clashes. Again, I have a trick to making it so, or a workaround to make it so those models that aren't hosted still generate clashes, but it's not ideal. So anyway, let's get into it. Let's get into project workflow. Okay, so I've taken the kind of average project workflow and how you can benefit from a clash on BIM 360. I broke it into four kind of categories here. It's initially, it's going to be accessing the clashes. All right, so how do I look and see and view all the clashes associated with my models, right? Once I'm able to see those clashes, how do I navigate that world? Okay, so it's a lot of the times you might find yourself between, like, a column and a bit and some ductwork, and it's like, what floor am I at? What room am I in? How do you, once you see that clash, how do you kind of back up and get that context to know exactly where you are? So that's kind of navigating the clash models. Then it's a matter of them creating clash issues. And again, with all the clashes that you might generate, it's how do you acknowledge issues? How do you create issues constructively such that they can be then followed up on? And that's this fourth category, accountability. And I think this is probably why I see so much value in this module, because the accountability aspect inside of BIM 360 lends itself to everybody, whether or not you're just work exclusively off the platform, whether or not you like emails, whether or not you like, however you want to reply to issues. It's almost all feeding back to one location, like that whole Revit concept. A change anywhere is a change everywhere. Or heck, responding to an issue anywhere updates it everywhere. So you'll see there's a lot of value to that. So first, you should know to access the actual coordination module. It's going to be under, so you click on where that top left-hand corner of the web interface and click on the model coordination module. And this, of course, would have to be activated. I'll talk about activating later on. But once activated, you should see this module, and you should be under this module. All right. So now, as I said a second ago, we'll be breaking down this workflow into these 4 kind of buckets. So the first is accessing the clashes. Do know some of these screenshots were taken maybe 3 or 4 months ago. My apologies. I know the interface has changed ever so slightly. So for example, the models clashes views tab is no longer on the top, running horizontally on the screen. It's actually now far to the left. It's still models clashes views. The terms are just the same. It's just whether or not it's on the left or at the top. So some of these screenshots, just know that it's ever so slightly adjusted. All right. So the models tab, however, okay. So you're going to find that for every Revit file hosted on BIM360, there's something called published sets. And so whenever you publish a model, you can click on the Revit file on the web and actually see that content via the web. But what content you see via the web is exclusive or to these published sets and what you're assigned to them. And we'll talk about how to create published sets later on. The point is that what you're going to see under models is every published 3D view for every model points in the coordination space. So you can see here, we have a lot of models here that we can click. And if we just check any one of these boxes, we can click view and be immersed right inside those models. And relatively quickly, even doesn't matter how dense the models are. It's pretty quick. So as you can see here, once you click view, you're inside this world where in this case, I'm seeing these 3 models. I can always go down here at the bottom here on the left and add more models if I wished. If I want to see more context, so maybe I'm just looking at light fixtures and electrical and mechanical work. Maybe I need to see walls and doors to really know what I'm looking at. So I click on the add, remove models, and then check more boxes to more models that I'd like to add. Then you have the option, however, once you've essentially found the ideal selection set of models, to say save view. I would love for Autodesk to rename that to say like save collection, because I think save view is almost misleading, like you're saving the view of what you're, like this axon shot, or if you're immersed, like this perspective. It's not that. When you click save view, you're actually just saving the collection of models that you're immersed in. And those views would fall essentially under this 3rd tab here. So a moment ago, we were under models, and that's where we saw all the possible models that could clash. And we selected a series of models we liked, and then we immersed in them, and I had the chance to say, again, to say save view. Right. So when I click save view, those collections will list here. Okay. So, and then you can name these collection sets anything you like. So, you might figure when I see a collection set that says arc, light, structural, MEP, and AV, that could very well be, in fact, 10 different models that I'm just have like merged together in one collection set that I've happened to name that view, that selection set. This. Okay, so I think more often than not, we start with models, and people will often like say, oh, I want to see this versus that. But because you can have so many models listed, it does behoove you to really create ideal selection sets, save these as views, and really just jump to this views tab. And then you can just select any one of these selection sets and be equally immersed, just as you were moments ago. All right, so now that we've talked about the models and the views, then there's this clash option, this clash tab. In the clash tab, you're going to be able to see every one of the models clashing against the alternatives up here. So you can see that the electrical model has 29 clashes with the fire model. The electrical model has 95 clashes with the mechanical ductwork model, so forth and so on. And I can click on any one of these yellow boxes and be immersed inside of those 2 models and showing those 2 sets of those clashes. Of course, these update relatively dynamically. We'll talk about that a little bit as well. What you're not seeing here, because this pop-up is slightly outdated, is there's a 3rd drop-down right next to all models in the latest interface. And that is essentially lists all the views that we just talked about moments ago. So instead of seeing every single model clashing against every other, its alternative here, you can select as just a collection set of models and only see them listed here, so you're not so overwhelmed by this matrix. So yeah, again, looking at how to want to access the clashes is just by either selecting the models individually that you care about to look at those clashes, look at the models clashing that way, or you can save those models into collection sets and go to the views tab and again select those series of models and be immersed in all the clashes, or you can click on the clashes tab and just see two models, the number of clashes between them, and select that that yellow box essentially and be immersed. So the idea now is, okay, now that I'm immersed inside these models, how do I navigate these models to really understand the clashes and ultimately create issues? That's where we're going now. All right, so I'm going to give just some brief overviews on how to really manipulate this world to understand where you're at. Know that there's a lot more, there are many other features that you can take advantage of. So in this case, once I'm immersed in a set of models, I can click on the sectioning and leveling tab or sectioning tab. And as you can see here, it creates a box. I can move it up or down to navigate the selection set that I'm immersed in. I also have the opportunity to click on the levels option here. And so it's going to recognize all levels in the project. You can select any one of the levels and it will section off that level. So it's really nice and easy to understand what the 7th floor is versus the 8th floor. By default, it's just ghosting out what I'm not selecting, which I think is nice for context, but you can always turn that off via settings as well. So again, as you can see here, I'm on the essentially just immersed inside the file and I'm looking at those models. Oh, at this point, you can see in the GIF what I did at the end of the GIF there was I just zoomed in and clicked on the person here. I call this like this lollygag mode where you can really just find yourself immersed on the floor and walk around. And I'll show a little bit more of that in a second. All right, so this is the sectioning leveling tool again, activating that section tool, moving up or down. And then I can also click on the levels option and isolate the level itself. Then there's the model browser. So still again, I'm under models. I can click on this, essentially what looks like a mind map of sorts here. Once you click on this, you'll see all the models listed here. And of course, you can expand each one of them. You can turn on and off certain models if you'd like. You can also, of course, expand them and turn off certain categories to those models. So again, whatever it takes to understand exactly, to see exactly what you want to see and not be, say, overwhelmed. You mentioned a moment ago the lollygag option. This is one of my favorite because it really allows someone to zoom in at any one location, part of the model, activate this person, the first person mode, and then using your arrow keys, you can walk around the models that way. I find that most people, this is probably the most intuitive. This is really nice and clean. If you have the walls and doors turned down, you can walk down those walls, you turn off the walls periodically, look, say, I always like to pop the tile, like turn off the ceiling and see what's going on and the plan above. Again, I have a better understanding of maybe potential clashes. All right, but again, that's really just how you can navigate once immersed inside of these models. Then the next thing is going to be creating issues. Again, we're about to dive a little bit deeper into clashes themselves, and then it's just a matter of identifying those clashes that actually have value and creating issues off of those clashes that have again value. So I have three options as to how one can create issues. Option one, you can create issues right off of a clash. So as you can see here, I've navigated from the cube on the very top there. You can see this 3D cube. That's when I was just looking at the models and the models I was immersed in. We just kind of covered that. I've navigated from the cube down to these two overlapping squares. Now you're looking at essentially all the clashes that are specific to the models that you're looking at. You can select any one of the models. So if there's a drop down here, so you can select, say, which of the, say, 5 or 10 models that you're looking at. You can select which model you care most about, and then it will look at the clashes specific to that model. You can even then sort by property, or in this case, what are the clashes looking at, whether it's object, system, type name, things like that. And then it's just a matter of clicking on a clash, and once clicked on, it will essentially isolate itself inside that viewer. Now, as I said a little while ago, once you select a clash, and maybe you're super immersed or super zoomed into it, it's then kind of turning on and off the models that essentially are hidden to give that context. Because heck, I don't know what floor this is on when I see this particular, say, column hitting what looks to be be it a wall for that matter, or some type of diffuser. The point is that I don't know where I'm at, where I am. So I would, again, use the model browser, turn on or off some other of the context, maybe lollygag around the space, and I have a better understanding of where I'm at. Once you identify a clash that you do care about, you have the option to say whether it's an issue or not an issue. Honestly, lessons learned here is I don't really waste my time with not an issue. I can get why there'd be value there. So if you have, say, tens of thousands of clashes, the more you say that are not an issue, the less you have to maybe see in list form here. I don't know. I find that depending on how you're hosting and how the live updates are occurring, you might even be wasting time, and that some of these not an issues become they almost reset with the next update. So again, I don't really waste my time too much with not an issue. But when I do find an issue, something that I am concerned about that I want the consultants to acknowledge is I would say issue. All right, and I actually click on the issue button. So again, you can select a clash, a series of clashes or whatever, and then it's a matter of saying, okay, this right here is something I want to talk about with my design disciplines. And so I click on issue. Once you click on the an issue, it's going to say, okay, fine, go ahead, click somewhere in the interface that the issue is specifically related to. So maybe I click right here at this connection here. And upon doing so, it's going to ask me to identify it, like a title, a brief description. It's going to help you out with a suggested title and suggested description. I find both of its attempt to help me kind of not helpful, and that the description is often silly, or rather just not constructive. So yeah, just go ahead and rename it, give a better description. At this point, you can also assign it to somebody or assign it to a company. You'll find if you click on that drop down, you can pick anybody already invited to the project, but you can also scroll all the way down to the very bottom and select a company versus just a person. So anybody assigned to that company can look and hopefully tackle the task, and whether it's a due date or whatever. So that's one way to create an issue. It's also worth noting there is now a new tolerance feature. So it used to be only like all hard clashes would create would be acknowledged in this list, which can be very overwhelming. Here you can see that you can now update and say, okay, I don't want to see every hard clash. I want to give a tolerance. So maybe it's piping that you want to give like a 3-inch tolerance. So that's a bit okay. This will absolutely reduce the number of clashes you're presented with. So by all means, take advantage of the tolerance option here. Okay. One other comment before I jump into the option 2 is, remember, you can sort your clashes, whether it's by model or by property. I mentioned that actually a while ago. Okay, so option 2, to create issues. This would be essentially just, again, now you're still in the same selection set of models as you were in the past, but instead of clicking on the 2 overlapping squares and looking at each clash and acknowledging whether something's of concern or not, now you're just essentially under the issues part of this interface. When you click on that, you'll see any existing issue that has been created off of clashes or whatnot, but you also have the opportunity to create an issue not off a clash, but rather just off of something visually you're looking at. So this is quite ideal if, again, you're, say, in that first person mode, you're walking down, say, a hallway, and say you see, for whatever reason, a fire alarm on top of storefront glass. I mean, that's silliness, right? Now, it might not come up as a clash because maybe, fire alarms can be surface mounted, say, on a wall. It's pretty typical. But if it's on top of glass, that's pretty silly, right? So you, at that point, can just say create an issue. If I click that same button, it's going to ask me to click somewhere where the issue is visually. So again, I probably click, as I look at, say, the fire alarm sitting in the glass, I click roughly there. And then the same scenario as before, I'd just be able to give a description, assign to somebody, so forth and so on. What's really nice is when you create issues, you should know that the issues themselves, so at the moment that you create it, so if I'm looking, so clearly I'm immersed inside the model. Clearly I'm looking and I'm touching something that I have a problem with. But what's also really nice is it will take a snapshot once you create the issue as to whatever you're looking at. So maybe there's additional context. Maybe, again, there's even some markups. What's just nice is that when you create the issue, it's also taking that moment in time and assigning that image to the issue itself. So under details associated with the issues, all the description, the breakdown, the explanation as to what maybe is the concern. But under attachments, you'll see a quick screenshot of what you're looking at. And you'll find later on we can add additional attachments. Maybe we want to sketch on top of this. Maybe we want to add another picture, say, from on-site or something like that. It's really easy to add additional content to these issues for later reference. Finally, option 3. All right, so option 1, just to recall here, option 1 is to create issues off of clashes. So again, you might have thousands upon thousands of clashes and you're creating issues only off 100 of say clashes. Option 2 would be to create issues just off of walking around the model and seeing something of concern. This last way to create an issue is off of nothing. Basically, you have a thought. And so the alternative to sending an email, say you just, instead of creating an email and sending it out, you just go to the document management module, go to the issues tab and click on create issue. And when you're there, you're able to identify the type of issue. By default, whenever you create an issue inside of the coordination module, a model coordination module, it will assign itself to clash or coordination. As you can see on the top here, if it's off a clash, it will assign itself to a clash. If you're just lollygagging or walking, it's not so specific to a clash, it will assign itself to coordination. Honestly, I find that I actually deactivate a lot of these issue types and make it so that it can only select 1 or 2 options so that they kind of all collect together without accidentally being under a different issue type. I encourage you the same, but the point here is that when I click on create issue, I can assign it to either clash or coordination if I want to take advantage of those, or something else if I really cared. But once you say create, it's going to ask for the same information in the past. You basically you're asked for a title, a description, you assign to people. What's nice, you can click add document and link it to other files. And again, you can upload images. It's just, again, you're creating an issue of something that's arbitrary. So being immersed inside of a model. Okay, so again, reflecting, we've accessed clashes by just going to the model coordination module. We have identified that we can just select a series of models, be immersed inside of them. We can create selection sets of models. And look at them just pre-decided selection sets, or we can look at the models clashing directly and click on that little yellow cube, right? So we now know how to get inside of our model coordination module and look at clashes. Then it was a matter of navigating that content and how to chop it up and move around. Then it was a matter of creating issues, whether it's off a clash, whether it's off a lollygagging, or just arbitrarily. And we're now at the stage where it's issue accountability. How is this unique or different than sending emails and hoping that people remember to act on your suggestions? And so, yeah, I've got 3 ways that we've come to tackle that. Perfect as well. Oh, way number 1. It's just really going to, I call it filtering live. So under the document management module, under issues, you'll see all the issues created in your project, whether they're created off of the model coordination module, whether they're created off of a punch list of some sort, they're all listed here. Then you can filter it live, right? So I can click on the filter icon, top left, isolate only clashes of coordination, and then I'll see all the issues accordingly. Once done, I can then say I only want to look at those issues that are opened or just answered, so I can ultimately close them. However, I want to, again, I'm just continuing to filter down the issues that are specific to the project. What you can also do, well, in this case, what you're seeing is that once I filter those issues, I can click on any one of them. I can look and see some screenshots, attachments. I can even click on that linked document and be immersed inside the model. Again, I mentioned earlier the screenshots, and then the activity. This right here, I can @ somebody. I can just add general comments. If I did @ somebody, do know that they'd be notified both in BIM360, but it's also an email. Again, email says, hey, look, you've just been, somebody just reached out to you, click this link, they'll take you back to this issue, and you can comment and respond accordingly. So it's really quite nice, nice there. What we found for the average coordination meeting, what we'll do is we'll not just filter it down to isolate the clash issues and the coordination issues and make sure that we're only looking at the open, the statuses that are open. We'll also essentially have an agenda to the meeting saying, okay, for the first 15 minutes, we're going to reach out just to mechanical issues, just the MEP engineer, say. And then the next part of the meeting will be structural. The next part of the meeting will be then fire or whomever. What's nice is that when we do something like that, we'll just filter live, not just to see the coordination issues and the status that are open. We can then also filter by assigned to, and I can filter by company at that point, or even sort by company. So you're able to at least have some type of control of how these issues are being reviewed live. So yeah, so let's keep going. All right, so that was the filtering it live. Again, it's just using the document management module, going to the issues and just clicking the filter icon and filtering and sorting it live during a meeting, say, or even if you're just trying to attack things on your own part of a meeting, you can just filter it live and isolate those things assigned specifically to you or your company. Next way to do a issue accountability would be the insight module. This is accessible under, the same way I could jump from document management to model coordination. There's also this insight module. I do believe this is free with document management, but it's also, I believe it is. Don't feel like you can hold me accountable to that. But yeah, I think unfortunately, however, when you add team members to a project, the insight module is another module you have to like click to give access to everyone to be able to see. So for example, if you do go to your BIM 360 project and you don't see the insight module as an option, but you do see document management, I tend to think that if you ask your project admin to add the insight module, which again is just under member permissions, you'd see it. Once you click on the insight module, you can, I think by default, it shows like the weather of that area or that site, and maybe some other arbitrary kind of information. You can customize, customize that dashboard by clicking literally on customize and adding cards like the coordination issue status card, which kind of gives you an overview. In this case, there have been 50 issues, 31 of which are still open, 19 answered. You can also then click on cards that show the issues by company, so you can see really who is outstanding as far as opened issues. What I like is this other card here where by default, it will show the project issues. So show essentially all issues, but summarized right here. You can isolate my company's issues. So look to see the company that you're associated with and list them accordingly, or just the issues specific to yourself. So maybe if you're trying to be on your game, you come to the insight module daily or weekly. You first start with issues specifically assigned to you so that you're not the bottleneck, and you click on those issues and solve them. But then you can maybe go to your company's issues and say, hey, look, is there something bigger and broader I can also help with? And then of course, project issues are not specific to your company, but rather holistically. And again, if you click on any one of these links, it'll take you right to the issue itself, so you can comment, respond accordingly, all that good stuff. What you're not seeing here is a recent update to this platform, is you can create shared dashboards. So this is me customizing my own dashboard to suit what I'd like to kind of highlight. What's really cool is that you can now create dashboards. It'd be on the left-hand side with a little plus sign. Sorry if the screenshot doesn't show it, but you can create a public dashboard and call it Clash Review or whatever. So this way, when someone goes to the Insight module, they can click on the Clash dashboard and see, be it this arrangement and format of all these cards. And of course, it will be customized just to reflect them and their company, of course. But what's nice is that you can, again, help everybody out by creating a constructive dashboard. All right, but also on the Insight module, you can go to reports. All right, so you can create reports. Now, you can create a live report any given time that you want to like summarize, create a PDF or an Excel file of the active issues assigned to your company. You can do that really by going to reports and clicking create report, all that good stuff. Or what we've come accustomed to doing at Perkins & Will is we have weekly reports. And so we have them set up per discipline. And what you can do there is that in this case, I've created a report. I'm making it export as a PDF, but you also have XLS if you like. I'm currently sorting it by due date and by title. I'm filtering it to include only the clash and coordination issues. The status in this case is anything that's opened or draft. And what's nice, under assigned to, it says 24 selected, but what that really is I've essentially assigned anybody that's any issue assigned to the Perkins & Will company. So if people are added to my project team, I don't have to come here and worry about checking more and more people under assigned to, but rather anybody assigned to Perkins & Will will just automatically include them. So again, I want to know all the issues assigned to Perkins & Will. I want a certain type and category, sorted a certain way. And then what I do is under share and schedule, I'm sharing it with anybody that's, again, with Perkins & Will company. I'm giving them a quick message. This is a weekly report, and it's going to be issued every week at 8 a.m. on Monday. And what's really cool about that is that, let's just say you have your team meetings every Wednesday. You want to be prepared for that. You want the team to be prepared for that. So maybe you create these reports to be issued to each discipline respectively every Monday morning at 8. So they have 2 more days prior to that Wednesday call to really get on top of any issues that are assigned to them. And that report looks a little bit like this. So this is a summary report. There is also a detail option, which basically creates like every issue has its own sheet of paper, basically. So these reports can be pretty long, pretty lengthy. And that sheet of paper has like a little screenshot of what it was looking at, the issue itself, what it was looking at. It gives a more elaborate breakdown of what the issue entails. But the summary one, which is what I'm a pretty big fan of, will kind of only it'd be just a smaller report, maybe half dozen pages or so, listing each open item, brief understanding as to what's going on. But then what's really cool is that even as a PDF, there's these live hyperlinks that if you want to see more information or you reply to an issue, click on the hyperlink, and it'll take you right to the issue itself online. So in this case, you can reply to it again, and you're on top of it. Great. So we talked about filtering it live. We talked about the insight module, and then there's this last option is model coordination views. So inside the model coordination module, under those views that we talked about earlier, if you were to click on a selection set, be inside that model, and then you can go to this to the issues associated with that model. And we kind of talked about this earlier. So you'll see all the issues specific to that selection set of models, and you can click on any one of them, and it will essentially immerse you in that model and that location. But what I find, and why this is especially kind of cool, is that if you click on the linked document associated to any issue. So let's just say that you created an issue off of a clash, and that clash is two models in conflict, right? Well, sure enough, when you create that issue, it will have attached to it the linked models that are in conflict. And so if you click on the linked models associated with the issue, it will take you to model coordination. It will take you to that clash, but you'll only see those two models. I find this to be a glitch in the system, meaning what if seeing those two models isn't enough for context? I need to see other models to show me that context. Well, accessing the models via the linked document associated to a clash issue, I don't have the option to add context. I only can see those two models. It's a weird glitch in the system. However, if I click on that same issue under this kind of immersion, so again, I'm under the model coordination module. I clicked on a selection set. I'm inside a series of models. I clicked on an issue. What's cool is when it takes me to the actual clash, it gives me an option. This only pops up when I go to the issue via this method. And it's basically saying, hey, look, you're about to be immersed inside this clash. Would you like to have other models turned on to give you context? Again, it's the only time I see this option. So it's almost like a lessons learned. And so it's quite nice to see this, because now you're checking those boxes, and now all of a sudden you can see that same issue with a lot more context than you would otherwise have a chance to see. All right, so that's the project workflow. Okay, so we talked about accessing the clashes, navigating the models, creating issues, and then finally issue accountability. I'm going to jump into how to get this ball rolling if you're still interested and want to take advantage of this module. But please, I know I do often talk quickly. I use a lot of words, but few are only probably necessary. So I say this, and you're welcome to post questions at this point when it comes to project workflow, things like that. I can answer them live, or I can answer them at the end. Yeah, that's your typical project workflow, from creating issues to tracking them. Okay, so going into implementation, how to actually get this going if you're interested in activating this in your project. Well, first and foremost, you have to activate the model coordination module, and your project admin will have to do that. All right, so that's just as a project admin, you go in, you go to services, and you click on activate module. When you activate that module, it's going to ask you, okay, fine, where do you want your coordination space? And the coordination space is, at this point, you're just pointing to a location to extract views to clash. That's what you're doing. You're pointing to a location to extract views to clash. Yes, it is recorded. Thank you to the anonymous attendee. Yeah, so when you click create, the next thing is, so when I say, okay, I want to create a coordination space to clash views, it's going to ask you first the name of your coordination space. And to be clear, you can have multiple coordination spaces. I would not encourage you to create a lot of coordination spaces right from the get-go. I would just start with one and seeing what that means to have just one coordination space. But as time progresses, you should know that you can create as many coordination spaces as you want. And each coordination space would be just what series of models it's looking for published views to extract to clash. Okay, so in this case, I'm actually encouraging you. This is something I've recently changed my mind on. I'm naming my coordination space project files. In the parentheses, I'm putting all hosted models, and what that really means is that I'm selecting just the project files folder. I could expand this, and I could select specific folders under project files, and it would only look at those models. But in my mind, all the models that are specific to this project are likely hosted and sitting under project files, and we shouldn't be archiving, like saving as and making copies of files under project files. The way that BIM360 archives content, there's really no reason to have redundant models. And so the really, in my mind, the files, all the Revit files that are under project files are hosted live files helping with the project. And so why not look at all of them by default? Okay, so I'm clicking coordination space, name the coordination space, selecting project files. And just to clarify, as you can see here, I'm just selecting project files, and now this is the template at Perkins & Will, where we have essentially a folder for each discipline, and that project essentially would, under ArcPW would be our active Perkins & Will models. If there was a mechanical model, plumbing model, etc., it would live under that folder. And again, it's going to rely on, this is the next screen, all the published 3D views as Clash models. And what that really means is that in this case, I'm inside my Revit file. All right, under the Collaborate ribbon, under Publish Settings, so my cursor is hovering over again the Collaborate ribbon, under Publish Settings. These are all these possible published sets. Okay, this is going to be the exact same environment that you might see if you were to go to the Control Print, right? And you had those select a series of views to print, right? That's the same environment that you see here. However, now you're given the chance to check boxes for those views that you want to publish with your Revit model as it goes to the cloud. So in this case, we do have a selected set called Clash Detection, okay? And under there, we've created these 3D views, all right? You can see on the left-hand side, there's a 3D view. In this case, I'm in the architectural model. And instead of asking all of our disciplines to create 3D views that isolate certain types of content and then creating a published set and checking it and doing all this on their end, we didn't really want to ask them to do this, though I do think there's value in having them do this themselves. But instead of having them do it, we just, inside the architectural model, we have all the disciplines linked in, and then we just, in each 3D view, we isolate that discipline and maybe some of that content. So you can see these Clash Arc Floor, Clash Arc Finish Ceiling, etc. That's just us isolating the architectural model, the live geometry, and then turning off categories that don't relate to floor, don't relate to finish, don't relate to ceiling, etc. So this way, each one of these 3D views is isolating that geometry. And the same then go for the MEP, etc. So we've, in these Clash MEP views, we're isolating the MEP models, and in this case, we're isolating just the fire protection content, so forth and so on. All right, so we've created 3D views, isolating that content, we created a published set, and we're setting all the views to, we're checking those views associated with that published set. So the coordination space that we created initially is going to look at this model, look at all the 3D views, and essentially create Clash models off of them. All right, so this is again me just showing you that I'm inside Clash Arc Lighting, and I just isolate light fixtures so that that's a Clash model. Now, yeah, so I want to make sure that we're just really clear before I go to the next tab here. These are the models that I'll be able to clash with on the model coordination module. So that first tab on the model coordination models, it would list all of these, and I could select any series of them and create selection sets with those views, or just immerse one at a time. All right, so that again these are the Clash models. And what's really cool and why this is better than Navisworks is that every the coordination space is looking at your live models. So there's no file export or update model coordination. Every time your model is published, all right? So again, that's not the same as syncing to central. The web browser doesn't look at, or does look at your central file, but that's not really what you're seeing when you're looking at the web. You're looking at the published model. So if you're manually publishing, whether it's once a week or whatever, every time the model publishes to BIM360, it's updating your Clash set. That's it. So you're already publishing, right? I'm assuming all of us are already publishing somewhat regularly, at least as an archive. Perkins & Will publishes every day. We use Forge, and so it automates it. So every day at midnight, all of our models, every project at Perkins & Will is published. So in fact, every night our Clash sets, all of our Clashes are updating. Okay, so pretty live, pretty awesome. There's no reason to again exchange content from our disciplines. Now, this does now come into the issue that I mentioned way early on, which is I want to go through non-hosted models. It's becoming more and more rare that our design disciplines don't have subscriptions to BIM360, but there are still some disciplines that don't. So let's just say in this case, you have your MEP discipline. doesn't have a subscription to BIM360, and they're uploading their models every week to give you updates, and they're downloading their model from BIM360. So they're not hosting on BIM360, they're merely using it as an FTP site. In order for their geometry to clash, because by default it will not show up as clashes, what you'd have to do is download their models for them. So let's just say they've updated on a Friday, okay? You as the architect would have to download their models to your local server and then collaborate them up. And what we've done at Perkins & Willis, we created this folder called Hosted Fix, okay? So in fact, if you see here on the right-hand side of this pop-up here, we have, if we're not looking at live models, but this is under Z Model Coordination folder, I've created a Clash container file, which is just a Revit file, that in this container file, there's no actual live Revit geometry. This is it's just an empty file with linked in content. So in this Clash file, I've linked all these hosted models, we'll say, but then I'm also linking to the hosted fix content. And what that is just, again, I've downloaded this file, I've re-collaborated it for them, but I'm not going to save it on top of their own model they've uploaded. I don't want to take ownership of what they're manually updating. What I'm doing is I'm re-collaborating it and I'm saving it into a different folder, calling it hosted fix, and I'm linking that content in. Just to be clear, this whole Clash separate, like this Clash container file, you're still welcome to do. And you can see the screenshot here. I still kind of support it in that it's just this one empty environment. It's like a collector file that you use for shared coordinates. It's like, it has no real content, but it links everybody else's content in. And as a result, you have just a really a nice clean control over what you're clashing. So you see inside this container file, I've linked all this content in, I've created 3D views, I've isolated all sorts of geometry per view, and that's what I'm clashing. But the challenge of having this container file, which is why I don't push it nearly as much as I push just creating coordination space off the project files folder, is that in order for this container file to update, you'd have to, like the clashes to update, you'd have to manually open it up, save and publish. It's not something that's dynamic because it's not the live file. So it's probably a little confusing as to like why I might consider doing this. Just know that you can. It's just an alternative way to go about doing things. I'm still a big, huge fan of pointing right to live hosted files. But again, the fix that I'm really mentioning in this whole anecdote is you have to collaborate your disciplines file for them. And I'm not suggesting that you save on top of their file when you collaborate it, or they're saving to some other folder that you're linking to or looking at, so that again, you're not like somehow overriding what they're doing. What if you are running a live working coordination meeting? Any suggestions to update model coordination live versus waiting for the public? Oh no, Josh, good question. So here's the thing. When the model publishes, all right, so I was saying that the clashes update per published models. You should know that, let's just say that 9 a.m. you've published your architectural file, right? There's an update, you made some changes, you publish your file, okay? Well, first of all, you should know that publishing, depending on how big the file is, could take minutes to even an hour, like depending on how many views you're publishing with it. So just the mere publishing, the time it takes to publish the model could be minutes, but could also be an hour. But once that file has been published, if you jump to the model coordination module, you'll see those clash models associated with that published model. You'll see like a processing thing, because there's no actual effort for you to say update clashes, but there is time for BIM360 to process the updates. And so if the call is at like 11, you're working with the team and you're making a change live, I wouldn't say, okay, let me just go in now, I've just made the change, let me do a publish and wait for you to visibly see the clash go away. I would say you take the action items, you make your effort, you make your changes, and later on that night, let it publish, and the next day you should see that the clash has been fixed. So I answered that live. Perfect, okay. So next slide here. So again, I'm a big fan of, activate coordination module, decide which models, yeah. So this is me just telling you again, I'm activating the module, I've selected views, I've created sets of views, talked about all that up till now. So this is again, me just showing you how another project took advantage of creating views. This is that really cool tab I mentioned before, I didn't show a screenshot earlier on. This is really cool. So when you go to that the clashes tab, right? So the models, clashes, views. If I go to this clashes tab, now with the latest updates with BIM360 is that you don't just see, like by default, you'll see all the models clashing with themselves, but now you can click on this little drop down and pick selection, like just only a a selection of models. And so again, that matrix just reduces it. So it's not nearly as overwhelming. Okay, so that kind of takes care of implementation. Again, it's super easy to implement, right? All you gotta do is activate the module, point to a folder, and then if every model is being hosted and you've already created published sets, you've already created Clash models just like that. Boom, done. Done. It's great. And then all you gotta do is then, of course, the project workflow takes into play, and you start like creating issues off the clashes, all that good stuff. Super easy to take advantage because your models are already hosted. Again, this is why it's almost silly not to take advantage of it. You just activate the module, and then you navigate that world, and whether you're creating issues off the clashes or on the fly, it's there. It's crazy not to take advantage of it. Okay, so over some strategies. We're at the end of the hour here. In this case, the lessons learned here is just getting comfortable orbiting, selecting content. I find that the biggest challenge often is when you isolate a clash, how to get comfortable with the properties such that you can know where you are. And do know that right now you can go to the properties and actually copy the element ID, go to Revit, search the element ID and find it. So that helps. Oh, and there's also, I didn't mention this. You can, there is, for each version of Revit, there's like Revit issues, BIM360 issues or whatever. So if you download that plugin, you can see the issues live per your clashes inside of Revit and select and isolate. It's pretty freaking awesome. And it's crazy intuitive. If you modify, if you update those issues in Revit, it of course updates in BIM360 too. So like, again, change anywhere, change everywhere is pretty freaking awesome. This is me just again talking about, honestly, I'm gonna kind of burn through this, just the hosted concept and making it so that you have to host those models that are not hosted, which kind of stinks. I guess finally, yeah, don't be overwhelmed, I guess, is that as much as I kind of spoke to a lot of features of model coordination, at its core, it's just activating the module, like I said, and like looking at published views and like looking at the classes associated. However you take that, in the beginning, maybe you're just orbiting models and just getting a better understanding of what the file of the project looks like. As time progresses, you become more and more comfortable creating issues off of clashes. So yeah, so I'm saying, ask yourself, is there value in clash detection and issue management? I think one-stop shop for all issues just makes sense. Is that value worth the one-time setup and weekly maintenance? Well, in this case, the one-time setup, I'm telling you, is granted you have to create the issues. I'm sorry, create the views to clash, but aside from that, we're talking less than an hour to really activate this beast. And there is very little weekly maintenance, so as long as you're publishing on a regular. If you're concerned with learning which method of issue creating and accountability tracking is best, I'm saying don't be. And that, I showed this, kind of workflow here. You can take advantage of just the models tab under the model coordination, right? And you can take advantage of just lollygagging and creating issues versus sectioning and leveling, and taking advantage of just option 2 of creating issues. Like, you don't need to be able to do all of the things per each tab to benefit. You can really, piecemeal it and just, take advantage of only certain features. I think that, oh yeah, I'd like to show this as a last screenshot. This is like one of the last, like our actual live meetings that we've done with this module, where what we'll do is we'll have the far left will actually be the models that we're being immersed in and showing context or issues and trying to navigate that issue. But what you're finding in the center here is just, we're filtering live the issues and isolating, because again, you got to figure we have a lot of people on the call, and when we're trying to be somewhat constructive, we don't want to just go from one issue to another that maybe is talking to two totally different sets of disciplines and totally different parts of the model or project. It's best to be a little more constructive. So when you filter live, heck, you could filter also by location. So as long as you upload locations to BIM360, you can not only, you can say, look, I'm talking to structural and mechanical for the first, first half of the meeting, and we're going to go floor by floor. So you can say, okay, filter the issue specific to those 2 disciplines, and then let's start with only issues associated with the first floor. Got it, I got it, we're all good, excellent, let's go to now location for the second floor. And again, you're just making filtering live that much more beneficial, that much more intentional. And so, yeah, again, as you see here, we have the issues live in the center, and then we're navigating the actual 3-dimensional view on the left, and it's certainly a crazy place. All right, that's it for the formal kind of presentation. I'd be game to answer any questions live that you might have. Anything? If anything, again, it's clear that I'm a pretty big fan of this tool, and more often than not, people are underwhelmed by how easy it is to navigate and utilize, because it's just you can jump all in or just dip your toe in, and the benefits are pretty obvious. Can you share your slideshow? I don't dive further into this. You know what? I feel pretty comfortable that I can. Whether or not it's going to be hosted by ATG, I can talk to ATG. I've done this presentation actually for Autodesk as well, so I feel like it's already published somewhere. So I don't think there's any intellectual property concern. So yeah, I have no problem sharing it. Let me just go through ATG to know how best to do that. Of course. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Oh, are you planning to use Construction Cloud version of BIM360 or stick with the classic platform they presented today? I'm assuming when you say Construction Cloud, those are the other like modules like project management and like the other CA kind of modules, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if there's a way to make it so that you can unmute yourself. If that's what you're referring to, Programs of World hasn't currently invested in those series of modules. We feel like that's more the problem with those modules, from what I understand, is that if you take advantage of them, everybody has to like have a subscription to them to really benefit. Whereas like the Collaborate Flow or this document management module or the model coordination module, like that, like it's important that programs will have a subscription, but there are workarounds to make it so that everybody can benefit from all the other features. Like heck, even if you didn't have a subscription to BIM360, but you're invited to our project, you can still respond to issues and all things alike. But if you want to take advantage of some of these other modules, and again, I'm just speculating as to that's what you mean by the Construction Cloud version. I believe everybody has to be on board and have an investment. Construction Cloud is ECC BIM Collaborate Pro. Oh yeah. Okay, so yeah, I honestly I thought the BIM Collaborate Pro was like just a rebranding of what we already own. I know that. I think everything comes down to the packages that you're purchasing. Like our package is like the old school BIM360 design package, which we have model coordination, we have document management, we have insight, but the other modules we just have it like super duper invested in. And I've looked at them, I've tracked them a little bit, especially because there's like a submittal aspect to it. There's checklists, there's punch lists, but I also feel like you can do punch lists and other things like that inside the modules that we have. But I guess like as of right now, we're taking advantage of what you've seen today. I'm interested in the other modules, but so as of right now, I'm not a special proficient. Cool. Well, thank you, everyone, for listening to me ramble. Always a pleasure. And I think that's about it, Justin.